damas y caballeros. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, Mr. Steve Howard!
All right. Well, thanks for coming out tonight on a rainy night. Appreciate it. They decided to let me dock this shipwreck for some reason tonight. But any mixed martial arts fans out there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the UFC and the old Pride and K1 and but I'm 45 years old, which means I'm also a child of the 70s, and which means when I was a kid, my heroes were guys like Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. But what's that? Oh, okay. Don't know that guy. Anyway, but in the 90s, when mixed martial arts came along, guys like me realized that much like a bachelor's degree in English literature, a black belt in a traditional martial arts is also worthless in the real world. But I'm a slow learner, so a couple of years ago I got into a fight, and the fight started, and I go into my stance, right? By the way, the traditional name of this stance is Fat Thrusting Elvis Plucks the Fried Banana Sandwich. You don't believe me? Check the Chinese character. That's exactly what it translates to. Fat Thrusting Elvis Plucks the Fried Banana Sandwich. But anyway, so I'm in my stance, and suddenly I'm on the ground, and my arm is being broken in 3 places. And then the next thing that young lady did to me, that's right, I got my ass kicked by a girl. The next thing she did was she put me in something called a rear naked choke. Now I'm a 45-year-old married man with a kid, and normally anything involving a woman rear naked is a good thing, but not in this case. And so when I eventually regained consciousness, I jumped up and I was like, "What the fuck, Rhonda?" Ronda Rousey. And then after that, I got arrested. Because it turns out that Fat Thrusting Elvis Plucks the Fried Banana Sandwich is a type of sexual harassment. And so they took me to jail, and they put me in a cell with a guy named Big Bubba. And I quickly realized that rear naked was about to take on a much more sinister turn for me. All right, any English teachers here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Teach English. I love it.
Dumb question, of course. I've been in Japan now for 13 years, actually. And I've been teaching English the entire time. But before I came to Japan, when I lived in America, I was a janitor, which means I've been a loser in 2 countries now so far.
Yeah.
But I do take my teaching job very seriously, and I mostly teach Japanese women. And I realized for my students, the LR pronunciation is very difficult. And so in my class, I do this little exercise. I have them say, lick, Rick, over and over. And while they're doing it, I videotape it. And then later on, I sell copies to horny guys named Rick that are into Japanese women. It's a little side business I have going, But your students, they study English for a lot of different reasons. And I had this one student, she came up to me and she said, I'm studying English because I want to understand American movies. And so one day in class, she raised her hand and she said, Steve Sensei, what's a good movie to help me improve my English with? And I said, Train Spotting. And so she came back the next week and she raised her hand again and she said, Steve Sensei, what's another good movie to help me improve my English with? And this time I said, Quest for Fire. So she was very tenacious, and she came back a 3rd time and she's in class and she raises her hand and she said, Steve Sensei, what does in English mean? And I actually spelled it out on the board, which was great because the rest of my students spent about 40 minutes trying to find it in their electronic dictionaries. I had another student, and she was 75 years old, and she came to class every day, and she was fascinated by American politics. And one day in class, she raised her hand and she said, "How are the erections going?" and I said, "The erections are going great. And your husband's?" She quit my class very soon after that. I don't know why. But you know, the very first English school I worked for was called Salt Mine Kids English, I believe. And I actually got fired from that job, and I'm still kind of pissed off to this day because I remember the job requirements were native English speaker, university degree, and breathing.
Yes.
And I thought, hey, I'm in, you know. So I started working there, and I thought everything was going pretty well. But then the staff started complaining, and so we had a meeting. And I go into the meeting, and I said, you know, in the contract, there was nothing in there that said teacher must remain awake during entire class. And there was no hangover clause anywhere in the contract. And so one day it was about 5 minutes before my lesson, and I was across the street at the convenience store, finishing my 4th chew-high, trying desperately to come up with some sort of activity, you know, because it was my mom and kids class, and you know, 2-year-olds need to be intellectually stimulated. You know how important it is at that age. And so I'm standing there, and I notice in the convenience store there's a display of fireworks. And I thought, hey, kids and fireworks, that's always fun. And it was fun. The kids were spelling out the ABCs with the sparklers, and the mothers were laughing and holding fire extinguishers. And I hadn't passed out yet. But then one of those little bastards, he decided to concho his friend with a Roman candle, and everybody just lost it. And of course, they fired me. And I tried to argue for my job. I said, you know, the 6 weeks that I've been working here, only one 2-year-old is caught on fire. But to no avail. But you know, teaching English, especially to kids, it's one of those life force sucking jobs. But in my case, there's some hope. Because, you see, that'll be the music interlude. In my case, there's some help because, you see, I am a novelist. That's right.
Woo!
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a self-published novelist, which is about as impressive as saying I'm an aspiring male porn star, but I am a novelist. And so, as a novelist, I got pretty excited about the recent boom in self-published ebooks. And so I did some research to find out, you know, what's the best-selling genre. And it turns out the best-selling genre is erotica. And when I learned that, I was like, well, you know, that makes sense. With modern technology, smartphones, we don't have to worry about the pages getting stuck together anymore. But I also, sorry, it gets worse from here.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's much worse.
Dive.
I discovered subgenres of erotica.
Oh no.
And I found
Like
one
what?
called Bigfoot erotica.
Oh shit.
This is not a joke. It
No.
actually exists. Yes, novels
No.
about women that like being fucked by Bigfoot.
Ah.
It has its own wiki page. But anyway, I learned that the best-selling Bigfoot erotica novel is titled "Come for Me, Bigfoot." Yes. C-U-M, the number 4, me, Bigfoot. And the author that wrote that, or as I like to call her, the illiterate crazy bitch that wrote that, actually earns $30,000 a week for Come For Me, Bigfoot.
No.
Yes, $30,000 a week. Now, like many English teachers in Japan, my major in college was, oh God, please let me have a best-selling novel so I don't have to teach fucking English the rest of my life. $30,000 a week. And I hear she's actually turning it into a screenplay. Yeah, it's going to be called 50 Shades of Bigfoot's Cock. Why not? Obviously there's an audience out there. But it actually gets worse because you see, women are not the only ones that are dreaming of fucking Bigfoot. Oh yes, gay Bigfoot erotica. It's out there too.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
No.
I need some hairy
And,
ass.
Ass.
The best-selling gay Bigfoot erotica novel is titled Bone Me Bigfoot. Yes. Now, as a writer, when I heard that, I was like, how? How the hell did that thing get published? I mean, could you imagine being the editor that had that gem land on his desk? What was the guy like, hey, Bone Me Bigfoot, that's alliteration. This guy's got talent. Let's publish him. I mean, right? Come on, Bone Me Bigfoot. Who's going to read that shit, right? Yeah, I just happen to have a copy here. Now, before you unfairly judge this fine piece of literature, let me read the blurb here on the back. So it says, John, an openly gay man, and Bob, a bi uncertain man, go camping together.
What happens?
Wait for it. And so when I read that, I was like, bi uncertain, what does that mean? So does that mean like when old Bob is on the top, he's confident, when he's on the bottom, he's unsure of himself, and when they 69, he's confused? What does bi uncertain mean? And apparently mentioning that John was a former Catholic priest and that Bob was a former scoutmaster was too risque for Bone Me Bigfoot. Sorry, did I offend the Catholics out there?
No, just the Scoutmaster.
Just the scoutmasters, okay.
Keep going, man.
But wait a minute. So it says here that they go camping, and at some point, Bigfoot comes on the scene.
Oh.
Like a fire hose.
Oh.
Because it turns out those rumors about cock size and foot size are true. But you know, the guy that I kind of feel sorry for in this is Bob, the bi uncertain guy. I mean, could you imagine you go camping on Friday, you get home, you wake up Monday morning, and you're an entirely new sexual orientation, right? You're bi uncertain gay Bigfoot loving male. Imagine the acronym for that one. And poor Bob probably gets no love on Grindr, I imagine. But anyway, as I was reading this thing, I was thinking to myself, so is this like a gay Bigfoot Brokeback Mountain, or... No, really? That didn't get you last night.
I liked it. I like that one.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the support from the bartender. All right, I'm almost done, I promise. But another problem I have as a fiction writer, you know, the first thing they teach you is show, don't tell, which means details. And so, as I was imagining myself writing one of these novels, I realized at some point I'm going to have to describe Bigfoot's giant veiny schlong, right? And because I don't think that Bigfoot is of the Judeo-Christian persuasion, I'm going to have to describe his giant veiny uncircumcised schlong. Because I don't see Bigfoot coming out of the forest with like a Christian cross or a Star of David shaved in his chest. Notice I left Islam out of that joke. All right, that's all I got. So thank you all very much.